You say that exo-conscious humans are co-creating with ETs and multidimensionals. Is that to advance our technology? Is that to advance us as humans?
The human is always the focus of exoconsciousness. The human is why we're here. We have a belief in exoconsciousness that consciousness is not the brain. So a lot of transhumanism, singularity, a lot of neural research today has sort of isolated the brain as the seat of consciousness in the human. We would flip that and say the seat of consciousness really lies outside our body in this field of consciousness that somehow the neural scientists haven't really determined, but somehow not just does our brain communicate with this field, but literally our entire body, our neural system, our endocrine system, the bones and muscles and organs in our body is all part of making consciousness possible. So we have much more of a holistic message with that.
Okay. So I understand that, and I guess it's obviously for our benefit, but I've always wondered what's in it for the ETs in advancing us as a race, as a culture.
I think because we are them.
Okay.
I think that our DNA, I think, going back to the concept of Pasmernia, that we're a seeded planet. Just Pasmernia is primarily like we're biologically or geographically a seeded planet from within the universe and within the cosmos. And I think gradually humans are coming to see that, we're not only seeded by the rocks and the debris and the bacteria that have come to Earth and the comets or the asteroids, but that we are really seeded genetically, and that's been part of our religious history across the world. It's part of religious history, and so we are just making a statement, I guess, making a public statement that we acknowledge the fact that we are cosmic creatures, that we are cosmic beings, and so just as these beings have a stake in us genetically, perhaps. We also energetically, they have a stake in us, that we have a stake in them. Mm-hmm. And that this relationship needs to be discussed and spoken of, not, set aside and laughed at or dismissed.
Did you ever see the movie Mission to Mars? Gary Sinise and I think Tim Robbins was in it.
Right, I see that.
Towards the end, Gary Sinise, when they discovered who they actually were and they were on Mars, and Gary Sinise said, "We're them, they're us."
Right, right.
And it was one of the high points of the movie. So you've also said that the ET reveal is currently happening through experiences and their transformed abilities of consciousness. So is this talking disclosure or just revealing what abilities we've got?
I think culturally across the globe, disclosure is a word that people know. It's it's a word that they identify with. I've known Steve Bassett for years and worked in the exopolitics circles for years with Michael Salla and Stephen Bassett. And when I was in DC, I attended the National Press Club informative information about UFOs. And so, yes, I think that it's always going to be disclosure is going to be a cultural context. It's going to be a political context. It's going to be, certainly it's going to be an economic context when official disclosure, when we've reached that tipping point, which I believe that we're almost there, that there is going to be a redefining of a lot of many, if not all sectors of reality, all sectors of society right now. And I would also add that the people who are going to be part of the vanguard of this are the experiencers. Because as wonderful as having your first UFO experience is, or having your first contact experience is, as wonderful as that is, the reality is it takes time to integrate that, and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to ground that and make sense of it and figure out what the heck just happened to me. And so I think now we're seeing there's there's a group of people, many of them, we in the Institute call ourselves kind of mature, self-defined, self-actualized exoconscious, because we want to be public with the fact that we have taken time to move through this process and how important it was that we did that. Now, could I have gone through that process as a child? No, I mean, culturally, it wasn't possible. Is it possible today to start that as a child? I think that's much more of a possibility than it was many years ago.
The reveal, I mean, it seems to be being rolled out slowly through experiences. What about the experiences that we don't hear from? We don't hear about. They're keeping it to themselves. What do you say to experiences that that may be too afraid to share it with anyone in a safe environment?
Well, I can give two examples. I'm a practicing therapist, and I had a man come into my office several years ago who's in his late 80s, into his 90s now, and he just had his first experiences.
Wow, into his 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
So,
and they were quite vivid.
okay.
There's a woman in our Exoconscious board who's in her late 60s, and she just now felt it was time for her to be public, and is just now sharing it with her family. So she's dealt with it internally. She's dealt with it in her heart and mind and developed her consciousness with it, but she hasn't dealt with it publicly and even within the intimate confines of all of her family yet.
Mm. I guess people are looking for a safe support group, I guess, to be part of first, and then gain the confidence, and then then maybe come out with it at some stage down the track. But I think to ask somebody to go from experiencing these things throughout their whole life and then suddenly thrust them into the public spotlight, I think it's a bit overwhelming.
Everything in life today is overwhelming, don't you think?
Yep,
I mean,
yep,
is this really any different than so many things that are happening to us today? And we're doing it to ourselves with social media, quite frankly.
yep.
Andy Warhol, 20 minutes of fame. I mean, or Truman Capote, whoever said that. So I think that there's a lot, there are many avenues, many opportunities. You can do it slow, you can do it fast, you cannot do it at all publicly. But it still is going to impact your life and your consciousness, and it impacts your body, quite frankly.